Now this is podcasting. Welcome to the Ben and Walker Movie Show. I'm your co-host, Ben Davis, joined by my other co-host, Walker Holt. And we're excited to have a conversation with you about one of our favorite things in the world, hay blippers. Have you ever crashed a hay blipper, Walker?
Not in a long time.
Been a minute since you've crashed a hay blipper? Okay, cool. If this is your first time being here with us today, please make sure you hit that subscribe button, whether it's on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcast, and give us a follow over on our socials at Ben and Walker Movie Show so you can stay up to date with all the latest content that we have for you guys. And today, guys, we're just going to jump right into it. You saw the title. We're going to be discussing a film that was pretty maligned when it came out, not beloved, didn't live up to the hype, but has since found an audience and has been reappreciated. But I'm not someone who had to reappreciate it. I loved it the whole time. Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, in honor of its 25th anniversary. It's wild that this movie's 25 years old.
I know.
As well as we're kind of celebrating the 47th anniversary of Star Wars as well, since it was released in 1977, now known as Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope. The Phantom Menace is directed by George Lucas and stars Liam Neeson, Ewan McGregor, Natalie Portman, Jake Lloyd, Ian McDiarmid, Ahmad Best, Anthony Daniels, Kenny Baker, Pernilla August, Frank Oz, Samuel L. Jackson, Keira Knightley, and Ray Parker, Peter Serafwentz, I think is how you say his name, as Darth Maul. If you aren't familiar with the Phantom Menace, the plot synopsis reads like such according to Google. Obi-Wan Kenobi is a young apprentice Jedi Knight under the tutelage of Qui-Gon Jinn. Anakin Skywalker, who will later father Luke Skywalker, what, no shout out to Leia? Okay, and become known as Darth Vader, is just a 9-year-old boy. When the Trade Federation cuts off all routes to the planet Naboo, Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan are assigned to settle the matter. So, as this plot synopsis clearly states, it kind of frames it as being Obi-Wan's story. Not really. It's not. And also, this is a very basic outline for what this movie is about.
Yeah.
Because honestly, this movie is pretty packed full of stuff, and it really serves as more of a prelude to what this saga would ultimately be about and eventually become, and less so of like a chapter 1. This is much more of like a prelude. But Walker, where were you in the summer of 1999? But more importantly, where were you as a Star Wars fan?
Summer 99. I was 9 years old. I was leaving 4th grade, going into 5th in Wilson, North Carolina. And in terms of my Star Wars fandom, I was definitely a fan. I was young, obviously. I didn't have the sophisticated understanding and tool belt full of Star Wars knowledge that I do now. But my cousin Andrew, who I've mentioned several times on the pod, my Uncle Hal was like a day one guy. Been a fan since the originals in the theaters, big time. And he introduced it to Andrew. Andrew introduced it to me. He had the 3-pack of VHSs. I'm sure you've had it too. That have Vader, Stormtrooper, and Yoda on them.
Yeah. The original trilogy, like the original trilogy, like the theatrical or the original cuts.
Yeah,
of them,
before the cuts. Yeah.
And
so we watched it. Obviously, I loved lightsabers. The toys were fantastic. Still the best toys I've ever had. So I was a big time fan. I mean, for a 9-year-old, I loved the action. I loved the characters. I loved playing Star Wars. I loved the toys. I definitely was a fan.
Nice,
as a youngling.
A youngling, yeah. The summer of 99, much like you, I got introduced to Star Wars pretty young. I always say, like, one of my earliest memories is seeing the re-release of the special edition.
Mhm.
It wasn't the first movie I saw in theaters. I've recently gone through every movie I've seen in theaters and put them in like a note list going from like when I was born on to now. Kind of, taking a page out of your book, honestly.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like something I do. You just doing it off. You just got it off memory. You just go through a list of every year theatrical releases, and like it's like no, I definitely saw that.
Yeah, and off
Wow.
release, so I would go on Wikipedia and look at like when movies were released, and also I had to like double check with like my oldest sister and be like, "Hey, I'm not just imagining this. I saw this in theaters, right?" Getting
Wow.
some confirmation there. In the summer of '99, I was 5 years old. I had just turned five. I was about to start kindergarten. This wasn't, peak Star Wars fandom, as I'm always riding that peak, as you can clearly tell from the everything about me. But this was certainly a peak era of many for my childhood. I was very blessed growing up that my parents really gave us a really good childhood, and my siblings and I were really close. And 1999 was really the last year where we were all like children, as my oldest sister was about to become a teenager. I think she was about to turn 13 or had already turned 13, if I recall correctly. So this was a summer '99 was a special time. As far as Star Wars goes, as I've stated a few times on here, my big three as a kid were Arnold Schwarzenegger, Batman, and Star Wars. Those were it for me. I lived and breathed this stuff, and watching the original trilogy all the time. I talked about it last year when we talked about Return of the Jedi. I watched that movie so many times, the original cut of it, that like it doesn't work anymore. It stopped working. It stopped working. The film got worn out. But at this point in my fandom, playing with the action figures and creating more adventures for Luke, Leia, and Han with my brother and sister, that was kind of like the high point for that, where we were all playing together. Um, Now, do you remember the lead up to this film, like any of the marketing or anything like that?
Yeah, not so much specifically, but definitely like vague, feelings and stuff about it. I remember, I mean this and I may be getting some, I'm just going off my memory right here, but I remember, internet wasn't what it is today, and especially for a,
No,
8, 9 or definitely a 5-year old. I mean, like I didn't have access or whatever.
I could barely read yet.
Yeah. But I remember, being introduced to Star Wars, liking it, and seeing the re-released cuts, and I think I probably liked it a lot at the time, and just because it was exciting and different and new, and it felt like my kind of version of the re-releases. And but I remember like rumblings, like someone, maybe Hal, my uncle, would be like, they're talking about, nowadays we know 5 years in advance who was directing it, who's starring in it.
Mhm.
I mean, we'd know a lot, and we'd be thinking about it, talking about it to death. And then it was just like, George Lucas is thinking, he's actually thinking about making 9 of them. Like I don't know, there would just be like these different
It's like Lord of the
rumors.
Rings. There were
Yeah.
there were rumors. Legend became myth. Myth became whisper. That's how it felt. I'm
Yeah.
exactly in the same boat, man. Like it's crazy. Like back in the day, like you said, there was no real internet at the time. I mean, there was, but like for a 5-year-old, 9-year-old, we're not using it yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
That doesn't really become a thing until what 2002, 2003, 2004,
Sure.
where internet usage starts to kind of pop off for kids our age. And for
And even
someone
if it
like
was,
me,
it wouldn't be something credible. Like you'd be on this like
no,
black, like HTML blog, like you'd be like, who's this guy? I mean, like there's nothing, there's no like real credible sources out there that are like, oh, we're looking at what
no.
MrMoviemania.com or something like, and it's like,
Yeah, it's all information that you get. It was really controlled. Like it's not as controlled today. It's everywhere today because the internet. But back in the day, information was really, really controlled and how it got out. And like you say, every little bit of information that I got, it felt like it was more hearsay from like my parents or from my siblings or from my friends on the playground, you know? Like it
Yeah.
didn't feel, it never felt to me like a real thing, but rather, something that people talked about wishing would happen. It was very similar to, I don't know if you experienced this, but after Titanic came out, Leo was a huge thing. Like he was massive. Still is, but that was the thing that catapulted him. Leo Mania was a thing, and he was strongly rumored to be Spider-Man, and James Cameron was going to be directing it. That's what it felt like to me. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's cool. I wonder when we'll see that. Oh, like,
Yeah.
I wonder if we'll see that. But once you found out that this was indeed a real thing, like, how excited were you for it?
It extremely. I mean,
Yeah.
I think I had already experienced kind of the jealousy that, these were a different generation's movies, or a different generation like took ownership of these movies, and now and I like, and I know that's not true, but we were. I don't know. I felt like this was mine. It's similar to like James Bond. Even like my dad considers Sean Connery James Bond all the time. You know what I mean? And while Pierce
Yeah.
Brosnan isn't necessarily the world favorite in the '90s, like it was like, well, this is my Bond. You know what I mean? So I really liked it a lot, and it kind of like, this is the one I'm going to grow up on, and the one I'm gonna. I mean, I'm a 9-year-old, young, and so
Yeah.
I felt that way about
Yeah.
this. I felt like, and I mean, I was just excited about more and more and more. And then once the marketing kicked in, and you have that trailer with the double, like with Maul, it feels like,
It's like that
oh,
memes of
dude,
Joe Rogan, like the oh,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
oh,
yeah,
yeah,
and
yeah.
all of the Pizza Hut type marketing was great, and it was
Pepsi. Do you
just,
remember the Pepsi cans?
I think so, yeah, yeah,
There was also that gross candy. It tasted good, but the idea behind it's gross. It's the Jar Jar tongue
yeah. Ugh, I
where
don't
you
remember
open
that
it
one.
up and it's like this gooey, like fruit roll up kind of candy. It was actually
Yeah,
really good, but yeah, it was
I,
kind of weird.
yeah, I don't. It was great. The marketing was great. The lead up was great. The hype was great. I was definitely very excited. Couldn't wait for it. I don't know. I mean, I was so
Yeah,
young. Gosh, it's hard to even like conceptualize it. But it was
right.
definitely. I felt the big deal of it.
Yeah, I did too. And it's like, we were talking about earlier, this really felt like a legend to me. And it didn't become real until I saw the trailer for it while I was going to see A Bug's Life with my siblings and cousins in the summer, or not the summer, but December of 1998. I think my mom and my aunts and my grandmother went to go see Patch Adams. And so
Hmm.
they sent the kids to go see A Bug's Life. And while I was
Yeah.
sitting down, I was sitting between my cousin Christina and my older sister Jessica, and the trailer happened. And it was like I felt like Steve Carell in The Office. Like it was like, oh my god, it's happening, it's real, it's real. Like it was just like my
Gosh.
mind exploded. And once I saw the trailer, it became my obsession. And between that and the flood of marketing that we just talked about, it really just dominated my imagination. It became my hyper fixation. Like
Yeah.
I wanted to see this thing, and I wanted to tell everybody around me that I wanted to see this thing and what was going to be in it, what was it going to be about, what is episode 1 compared to like episode 4, what is this story going to be about, and then having
Yeah.
to realize like, oh, that little boy is Darth Vader, and it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, like, it's this is pretty cool. And yeah, it was just the marketing blitz is what I remember. It's very similar to like, I haven't seen anything reach this amount of marketing blitz since really The Force Awakens is the only thing I can really compare it to. Because even the Avengers stuff, it's like it's marketing, but it's not everywhere. Like
Right.
Force Awakens was everywhere. Phantom Menace everywhere. And I could just everywhere.
Yeah.
You could not escape it.
Yeah. I mean, it was I love that vibe. I mean, I miss
Yeah,
it,
I
and
do
I
too.
and you mentioned the trailer. I've talked about this before, but I got it. I miss. I mean, I'm I see so many movies now
I do too.
that the trailers used to be one of my favorite parts. I used to lot like anyone's like, "Well, you got time? There's trailers." I'd be like, "Are you joking? We're definitely going to get there in time for the trailers." That's an incredible part of the experience. And now I'm seeing so many. The trailers are online all the time. I've seen
Hmm.
most of them. It's so rare. I would say definitely less than one per movie. I mean, maybe less than a half of trailer per movie is new to me that I haven't seen already. And so I've started to become, if I'm by myself, because I see a lot of movies alone, like I give myself about a 15-minute buffer that I don't necessarily need to be there by trailer time anymore. Now, I one
Especially
thing
because we have assigned seating now. That makes it easier to do that.
yeah, sure, yep, great point. And I do still, however, like for normal people who aren't obsessed with movies, like Dune opening night or something, and we're going to the theater, and it's a packed house. I do enjoy the trailers then,
Yeah.
even though I've seen most of them. Most of the people in there haven't
Well,
seen most
it's
of them, so you
like
get to kind of
getting
get the
a
murmur
good
and the
appetizer before you get the meal, you know? It's like getting that
yeah,
the thing of onion rings before you get the big steak, you know? It's like, yeah, this is
yeah.
delightful.
But it's more of a like a living through other people. Like I like the chatter that happens. I like after. I mean, I've seen the trailer 4 times,
Mhm.
but other people haven't, and all of a sudden now I just can hear people in the theater like, "Oh, that's the guy from that bunch of whatever," and like, "Oh, it's like, oh, that looks pretty good," or like, "That looks so stupid," or so. It's just fun to like kind of get the vibe, especially if you're with people. I mean, it's just a different vibe that you get to kind of vicariously like experience it the way you used to. So I I do miss that aspect of it. I mean, like seeing a trailer, especially as a 5 to 9 year old. I mean, that's definitely going to be a lot of your, the majority, maybe all
Well,
of your discovery in terms of
the thing
movies from
is like being that 5-year-old and or at this time 4 and thinking
that.
that this movie's not real, you know, or like eventually at some point it can be real, then all of a sudden realizing, oh shit, this is real. You know, like it's that excitement of like seeing something that's been inside your head for so long, or this thing that's been rumored for so long. You know, I'm 4 years old. It's not like I've been waiting that long, but you know, like
Mhm.
it's been permeating inside your imagination for quite some time, and then seeing like, oh no, it's a reality. It's really cool, and it becomes like tangible. It's like, you know, the most recent thing I could compare it to in terms of like trailers and getting that trailer and realizing, oh no, this is real. I think I could do Avatar: The Way of Water because that trailer dropped with Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness like a week and some change before it actually aired online. I think that that was such a cool thing because you could hear people buzzing about seeing it in the theater before other people had. And I remember that reaction in the theater too, where, you know, there's always some chatter in the trailers and stuff like that. But when that trailer popped on, it was like a hush fell over the theater. Like everyone just quieted and paid attention.
That's that's
That's
awesome.
a great thing, man. It was a great thing, and it's, you know, it can sometimes lead to some movies, you know, being hard to live up to as well. Setting that, you know, it's not, you got to be careful not to let your speculation become your expectation. And I'm sure we'll get into more of that when we discuss the merit of the movie. But what was it like seeing this film for the first time in theaters? But also, what did you think about it after you saw it? Being a 9-year-old.
Sure. It was great. I don't remember if I saw it opening night, but I'm almost positive I saw it opening weekend.
Mhm.
Like there was definitely, and I'm sure you could have seen it several weeks into it, but it at the time, I mean, the theater was nuts to going to see it. Was there any like memorabilia or propaganda that they gave out? Like, you remember in the Pokemon movie, they gave out like that Mew or that Mewtwo card or whatever it was at some
I
point.
was
Like a
never into Pokemon really. That was more my brother's thing,
yeah,
but I think he had that card.
yeah. I'm wondering if there was any like toy or something they gave out on at the thing, or if it was more of a or collectible popcorn
I
bucket or something.
I think they gave out a poster, but I have a very special circumstance with seeing this movie that after you tell,
Yeah,
I will tell.
it was exciting. It was just me and my mom. I'm pretty sure she just took me to see it, and I talked about it the other day with her because I was telling her about it was re-released in theaters. I got the chance to see it in theaters again this week or last week, and
It's a shame you had a chance back in 2012 to take me to go see it in 3D. You never did it though.
I thought I did. You keep. I thought I did. Did I not? No.
I don't know. It's up for debate.
I and I mentioned it to her, and she was like, "Oh yeah, you made us sit on the first fucking row the whole time." I was like, "Well, obviously, very exciting. I mean, it's been 25 years. I believe I loved it. I believe I mean, I was 9. I was excited. Also, I believe I'd love it today in the same circumstance. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard. We talked about living up to the hype. After one viewing on opening night with that kind of energy, it's hard not to. It's hard to
It
think critically. It's hard. I mean, you're like, that was a blast, and then it ends the way it. I
yeah.
mean, you're like, that was amazing.
You're
So I
like
mean, yeah, it was.
shaking leaving.
It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
overall a very positive experience. I liked it quite a bit.
Yeah. Like which theater did you see it at? Did you see it at the Regal 6 or was it
I'm
Carmine?
sure it
Cuz
was Regal 6.
I never saw it in Wilson. I saw it twice. I saw it in Raleigh. So I want to share a really really cool story. I think I might have told you about it,
Mhm.
but as I said, like my first time going to see this movie, I was so excited. It was my hyper fixation. I was obsessed with seeing this movie for 5 months since realizing, oh no, this is real. This is going to be a movie that comes out and you'll be able to see it. And as I said, I was willing to tell anyone willing to listen that this is the movie that I want to see and I want to talk about it with you. And I remember one day, this is toward the end of the elementary, or not elementary, but preschool year for me. And my mom went and picked me up from school, and I'm sitting at my grandmother's house talking with my my aunt Judy, and talking to her because she was a big lover of movies, and talking to her about how much I really wanted to see this movie. And I remember her telling me, like, well, good things happen to those who wait. You'll eventually see it. Just, keep in mind, good things happen to those who wait. Maybe something will surprise you. Who knows? And then the next day, keep in mind the movie hasn't come out yet. The next day, I'm thinking we're going to go see this movie the weekend, but my mom comes and picks me up from preschool. I get in the car. She has this look on her face, like she's really excited to tell me something. And I can tell. And she tells me, she's like, "So, all right, Ben, I got something to tell you." I said, "All right, what you got for me?" And she's like, "All right, so remember how we really wanted to see Star Wars this weekend?" And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Well, your dad's going to be out of town, so we're going to wait to go see it with him." And I remember kind of being deflated, but then she's like, "All right, so that's that." She's like, "However, good news is," and she's like, "Can you keep a secret?" I said, "Oh yeah, I can keep a secret." She's like, "All right." She's like, "Well, your cousin, um, who happened to be Aunt Judy's son, he was running a theater up in Raleigh, and he was the manager at this theater. Like he has invited us to go see Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, before it comes out." And dude, you could have told me that like Christmas had just came. I started like instantly shaking, trembling. This was like I think it was the night of the 12 o'clock premiere. But my cousin was holding a employee screening to those people who weren't going to be able to see it that opening weekend because they were going to be so busy.
Yeah, right. That's incredible. I don't.
The
You've never told me
coolest
that story.
story ever.
You've never told me that
Coolest
story.
story ever. Yeah. So I don't know if the story would get him in trouble. I mean, it's been 25 years, you know,
Sure.
but employee screenings happen often from what I hear of movies at movie theaters and such. And for people who aren't going to be able to attend the theater that weekend because they're going to be working. So my mom, after she told me that, she's like, "All right, you can't say anything though, because when we show up, there are people camping out for this movie. There are people waiting. You're going to cause you know, a riot if you tell people you are going to see this movie before people can actually see it. So you can't say anything." Like she was very adamant about that because she knew just how excited I was and how often I was willing to go up to people and just, hey, let's talk about Star Wars. But after that, I remember my mom going to picking up my brother, my sisters, and she took me and she took us to Walmart and she let me and my brother pick out some Star Wars action figures. And I remember for the new movie, I remember going to get like an Anakin, an Obi-Wan, a Qui-Gon Jinn, and I think I got like a Darth Maul. And at the time, these figures were like $5 a pop, as opposed to what they are now. You know,
How
when
much are
they're
they now?
about like this, they're about this big, 3 and 3/4 inch. They're I think those ones are probably about $10 to $15 a piece. I have a couple still left over from then. Over, I think it's two Anakins I have just chilling over there. Um, or those are for Zoe. But I remember going to the theater that night, bringing in my action figures, and my mom hiding them in her purse. Deathly
Mhm.
afraid that people were going to say. And I just remember seeing people like this theater was packed. The movie hadn't even started yet. There were people camping out. It was a thing,
Mhm.
and got into the theater, and I remember distinctly sitting beside my grandma and my nana and my mom sitting in between them, and I was holding my action figures in the movie like this. And whenever they would fight with their lightsabers, I would do like this with them and stuff like that. But I just
That's
remember my imagination just exploding. Loved it. It was a thing that I was obsessed with from that entire summer. And it is one of my favorite movie theater experiences ever because I got to see it before its 12:01 a.m. premiere. So before the general public got to see it. It is one of the coolest stories that I can share. And I like to thank Aunt Judy and my cousin Donald for that experience because that was it's hard to top that. That's one of my favorite theater going experiences ever. You know,
Yeah, that's
for a
amazing.
5 year old.
That
It's
sounds unforgettable.
it really is. It really is. And I we eventually went to go see it again with my dad. I think it was like 2 weekends after that, and it was still a packed theater.
Yeah, not bad.
It was still a packed theater. But with that said, watching this movie as an adult, how do you feel about it now?
Gosh, man, I'm trying not to be too long-winded here. It's a complicated relationship. I mean, the I'm a
That's
Star
fair.
Wars fan. I'm a Star Wars fan. I've been a Star Wars fan most of my life. There's been small portions, probably in high school, that I cared a lot less, paid a lot less attention to it. There was way less in your Star Wars in your face. It was just after the prequels,
Yeah.
and I loved it when it came out. And I'll be honest with you, it's been a bit of a roller coaster, both critically and how I feel about it.
No.
You put any sort of Star Wars in front of me, I'm going to eat it up. I'm going to go see it. I'm going to enjoy myself. I'm going to smile. I'm going to have a good time. There's going to be parts of it that really resonate with me. And that includes this movie. I saw it in theaters last week on the re release with my cousin Andrew, who's been probably my number one Star Wars guy for my entire life. And we had a couple beers beforehand, went in there, had a blast, laughed, had a great time, watched the Duel of the Fates, and it so I have a good time. I think I'll have a good time every time I watch it. If we're talking I'm really looking at the movie, I'm looking at the script, I'm looking at the screenplay, it's also a roller coaster to where, I mean, I loved it as a child, and then it just started getting beat up so much where it almost felt like the cool thing to do is just hate it. You know what I mean? And and I started to realize there were some parts of it that I didn't think were all that great, and some themes of it. But so I started thinking it was just absolute garbage for a while. And then it started to, like, I don't know if it's the nostalgic factor, because Star Wars has, I mean, I hate Star Wars has this special ability for me to it just has a magic about it that transcends a lot of thought. I think. I mean, there's just something about it that has so many things of, like, nostalgia and fun, and it spans so many, like, ages, that is so amazing, and it also can be great in certain properties, to where it's my critical opinion of it has grown back again and become more enjoyable the older I get, and I so, I mean, I know it's a vague and long-winded answer, but it's been a wild
No,
ride.
no, that's completely fair. I mean, it's a franchise. Everyone. I hate when the term fan service is used in a negative context because it makes no sense. If you're a fan and it doesn't service you don't feel like it services anything, then it doesn't make any sense to call it fan service, right?
Mhm,
That makes no sense as a negative.
mhm,
But it's a franchise built on nostalgia and fan service, right? George Lucas wrote this story based off of the things that he loved growing up. So it kind of touches that special place within us all of nostalgia. And that's why I think Star Wars means so much to so many people over so many generations, because it taps into that. And we all have that shared experience with it, celebrating Star Wars with our friends, with our family, and with other fans. And, you know, watching the movie now as an adult, I do think that this movie has its faults. The protagonist isn't exactly clear. It switches between Qui-Gon Jinn and Padme, depending on what the story needs. The line delivery sometimes isn't the best, and there's a lull in the pacing once you hit Coruscant. The
mhm.
the story kind of slows down, not a whole lot because you're not there that long really, but it's enough to where you notice it. But regardless of that, I still think the movie is the perfect gateway to Star Wars for children. Just the other day, on May the 4th, I watched this with my daughter, and she loved it. And
Mhm.
when Darth Maul and Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan were fighting, Duel of the Fates, she did, "Daddy, get lightsabers." And her and I were fighting with lightsabers while they were fighting with lightsabers. And, that's a special moment for me. But it's the perfect gateway for children. And not only that, but the themes that this movie explores, always being a helping hand to others in need regardless of your situation, following your heart and coming together to put aside your petty differences in order to do the right thing no matter the odds. All those themes are very, very true to Star Wars. I
Mhm.
have this ranked seventh in my rankings still from our ranking last year when we did Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
But oddly enough, I think right now this is the movie that I have felt the urge to rewatch the most for like the past year. Maybe because it is celebrating its 25th anniversary and I'm getting nostalgic about that time. Maybe that's the reason why subconsciously. But I think it's also because my daughter is at that perfect age, and that's why
Mhm.
I'm to introduce her to Star Wars, and that's why I'm constantly popping this on, to kind of have on in the background.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's also visually very pretty and colorful, and less like the originals
Yeah,
are. I mean, maybe Jedi a little bit, but the original three are mostly very grungy and bleak looking. You know what I mean? Like, in terms of, like, it's space, and it's inside of a, and they got that
yeah,
grungy, like, worn look that isn't very, like, visual. I mean, it's visually amazing. I understand that, but you know what I'm saying. Like,
lived
not for
in
maybe a
universe.
4-year-old.
Yeah,
Yeah, not as
yeah.
colorful for a toddler to like.
It feels like that
Naboo is
very lived in
gorgeous.
universe. Yeah,
Yeah,
Naboo. I want to live there.
yeah, and you've got like
I
the
want to live.
shields that are purple, the Gungan
Mhm.
universe. Everything's just like, especially at an age where like visuals are so important to capture your attention.
Well, it's also like you can tell this. You can, and George Lucas, to his credit, has said this. This movie is designed to where you can turn off the dialogue and you can still be able to understand what's going on in the story. And he's right. You can turn off the dialogue and still be able to understand what is transpiring in the story that we're watching. And I think that that is why it has this cross generational appeal. Is no matter what, you can set a 7-year-old down and a 7-year-old down, and they're going to be able to understand the story and also be able to engage with it. As part of the magic of Star Wars too, is you can make that 70-year-old feel like a 7-year-old while they're watching this movie because it reminds them of being a kid.
Yeah,
And I think, while I do say that time has been kind to this, I think at one point it had like a 47% on Rotten Tomatoes. It has raised a little bit. The Rotten Tomatoes score currently sits at 53%. So it's going up a little bit. With the
Mhm.
Phantom Menace being, or not the Phantom Menace, but the consensus for the Phantom Menace being burdened by exposition and populated with stock characters. The Phantom Menace gets the Star Wars prequels off to a bumpy, albeit visually dazzling start. Do you agree with this consensus here?
I definitely agree. I like the phrasing there.
Yeah.
I like the words. The score. I mean, again, it's tough. Star Wars is tough. I'm so biased towards it, and I want to watch this movie. So my score might not reflect that sentiment, but I do want to be clear that if you're gonna pop on Phantom Menace, I'm gonna watch it, and I'm gonna be like, oh, you're watching it? Let's go watch it. It's gonna
Yeah,
happen.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
My score is probably sitting around 60 out of 100 if I'm actually ranking it. And again, you mentioned seventh. It's if we're talking about 11 movies, the nine. I don't know which ranking we're
Let's
going
see.
on, but if we're
It's a
including Rogue One
it's
and
11.
Solo,
It's 11. I include Rogue One and Star and
it's 10 for
Solo.
me. It is only above Attack of the Clones. That said, I've similar to you, I've had a hankering to rewatch the prequels lately, and specifically Attack of the Clones because Attack of the Clones by default for me, I uh I just think of in the most negative light. Like I don't. There's parts of it that stand out to me, and they're the worst parts. But I've seen a couple little things, and I don't know what it is. Maybe it's like things on Instagram I've seen floating around. It's like, you know what? I need to give that one. I need to rethink my
You
thoughts on
should.
it.
You should. I think, I know we're talking about Phantom Menace today, but Attack of the Clones has some great Star Wars in it. Now, the biggest drawback in that movie is the romance.
Yeah, that's what I think about. I just think of them in a meta.
Uh,
Like it's like sand, it's coarse, and it gets
See,
everywhere.
I defend that. I defend that. I do not defend, however, you are in my very soul tormenting me. Or, sorry, my lady. And he just creepingly stares at her. It's like, stop it. Who wrote
Yeah.
this?
Also, it's helped the return of Hayden Christensen a little bit has been so fun, like to have him come back to Obi-Wan and Ahsoka. I don't
He's
know.
great
I
as
just
Anakin.
I just kind of want to go
I
back and
love my boy
rewatch
Hayden.
all the prequels again. So and Sith too. I mean, I'm not. It's a crowded room. I mean, there's just a lot of good movies in those 11 things. There's a lot of good stories, and like something's got to be last. Something's got to be second to last. Doesn't mean I like dislike it or hate anything, but I think right now that it's around 60 for me. But I
Yeah.
do agree with the consensus. I think the reason, and it's tough to like break it down, but like I do think the exposition in the dialogue can be a little like God, like a little like Trade Federation. It's like, and I think and you mentioned it earlier in terms of the protagonist, the characters, and I don't. It's just what it is. Is it's pretty small scale in terms. It's such a seed planter movie. You know what I mean? And they have these
It
epic.
is. It's a prelude. It's a
Yeah,
prelude.
they have these epic scenes and moments and things that stand out that we'll get into, I'm sure, in the next section, but or in a couple sections, but that make it feel like this grand film and thing. But in terms of the actual story progression, it's just a seed planter. I mean, it's just to like kind of introduce us to like the state of Anakin and everything, and throw some explosions in there to make it fun. But in general, it's just a blockade from the tax federation on one planet. It's just how the story got introduced, which is it's a weird to make. I don't know. It's such a weird dynamic to make this small scale story into this larger than life prelude, like you're saying, and some of it can get weighed down by exposition and stuff like that. But visually, it's great, and there's a lot of great Star Wars in it, and I don't. There's a lot of things people hate about this movie, a lot that I don't hate nearly as much. I think I think they get over trumped
Yeah,
on, and I think that's
yeah.
maybe kind of has to do with the recent like
Like
increase in my
it's
opinion.
it's the Jar Jar hate and the Jake Lloyd hate.
Mhm.
I don't get. I
Yeah.
don't understand it. Like in my opinion, I love Jar Jar. He even before I had my dog Baloo. Like he reminds me so much of Baloo, so much. But like even before I always loved Jar Jar because he was just so goofy, just so goofy and funny. Just I even as a kid, I loved Jar Jar, and the hatred that that character got from so many people, like creating fan sites dedicated to hating on him, recording videos of the burning of Jar Jar figures. It's like, come on, man! Like,
That's silly.
grow up, grow up.
Yeah,
And the
or
Jake
the
Lloyd of it all,
opposite of grow up is get young, embrace your childhood, like stop acting so
yeah.
grown up. I mean, it's for
And Star Wars is meant, like I know everyone loves to say, "Oh, well, Star Wars needs to grow." People who got upset with the prequels are the people that are upset that Star Wars didn't grow up with them. Star Wars has always been the same, regardless. People who are just they want Star Wars to get more adult, but Star Wars is meant to be it's meant for kids, but also to be enjoyed by adults, to remind them of childhood, like you said. That's what it's meant for. And the Jake Lloyd hate too, like he's fine in this. I don't understand the hate. Like he's better than Natalie Portman in this, I think.
that's funny. Yeah, I mean, I hear you.
But I just I don't get I never understood those hate. And it wasn't really until I would say around 04, 05, like 04, 05 that I started to realize, oh, people don't like these movies.
Yeah, it's funny. You get like that is funny. I mean, when you're like, wait a minute, what? Like I thought we were
Yeah.
loving this. I don't like this movie.
Yeah. I thought we were all digging this. Did I just read the room wrong? Like
That was just in my living room. Everyone else, but you guys aren't. Oh, I'm thinking
it's
about this
like,
wrong. You
wow.
guys still like the
Yeah,
first
okay.
ones? That's funny.
Yeah, it's so weird to me. It wasn't really until then that I realized that people really didn't like these movies, and I still to this day I hold them in such a special place, not just because of nostalgia, but also like I like them as stories. Not I don't think any of them are perfect. Like I'd say that I think Revenge of the Sith is pretty damn close to being perfect, but if not perfect, I freaking love that movie. But episode 2 and episode 1 they have their faults, but they're still really good. I still enjoy it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Less so really good with episode 2. I think it's good. It's got some great Star Wars in it, but I've never understood some of the hatred and vitriol for this movie, but I think upon kind of doing my research for this film, the thing that stood out to me was you could see the seeds planted. So like when the original trilogy got re-released and there was changes made, like the Han shooting first, now he's no longer shooting first. and you
Mhm.
see there was really no changes made to Empire, but there were more aesthetic changes. But then you have the Return of the Jedi with the musical number that's very out of place.
Yeah. The buttle
You
editions.
start, yeah, and you start to see, you start to see the the vitriol come from fans that you are changing this thing that meant so much to me, and you're not giving me access to it anymore. Like you can find the original trilogy if you want to, but the vitriol really started then. And then you also have to live up to the expectation of what episode 1 can be when it's been living with the people that saw Star Wars in 77, 80, and 83. It's been living with them for so long. And there was a
No.
moment there in the 80s where Star Wars kind of disappeared and it didn't really return back until you got like the the stuff with Thrawn. It didn't really return back until then.
Yeah. And I've never been I mean until really the Disney acquisition, I didn't have much outside of the films. I didn't
I
have any.
tried I
I had a
tried
couple
to dabble in
toys
it.
that like I have like what's that green guy's name? Prince Caesar.
Yeah.
He's bald with a ponytail in the back, I
Yeah.
think. I had that
Yeah.
action figure and I was always like, "Who is this guy?" And I was like, "No, when the new movie comes out, like when the new ones come out, it's gonna be like all about him." And I'm still waiting 20 years later. It's like I've never seen this guy. I don't know who he is. I think he's in a book or something. I don't know. But like I don't have it. I've read very few books. And I mean, once the canon became established and we filtered out a lot of it,
Yeah.
I've not reading. I mean, reading very little, but I've filled out my canon knowledge. But the rest of it, I don't know anything about. I remember seeing Star Wars books like at Walmart in the
Mhm.
book section and being like, "Wait a minute, is that going to be a movie?" Like just like confused and not knowing what's going on, or is that like fan fiction? But
Yeah, it's you had that stuff pop off in the 90s, but I think, you know, trying to live up to the expectation of this was going to be impossible because it's like when you read a book and you then see the movie. Well, you've already thought about everything in your head and it's much more detailed in the book. So when you and in your head. So when you go see that movie that's based off the book, it very rarely lives up to what's in your head. You
Mhm.
know, and I think, what I said earlier, and I believe
I
I've
don't
heard
read.
this. Yeah, that's why I don't read.
I don't need that ruining
Same here,
movies for
man.
me.
Yeah, same here. Actually, I what I do is if I watch the movie first, then I read the book, and it actually makes
Yeah,
me appreciate the
honestly,
movie a
I
little bit
don't
more.
think it can hold
You
up
flip
reading
that.
first.
No, it never
I don't think
does. I don't know
it
why
can. I
people
mean,
do it.
because you get your imagination in there, and I mean, it's you paint this impossible picture
Mhm.
to uphold, and I'm not a big reader, so it's been very few times have I read a book and then seen the movie afterwards. But even if I like it, I mean, like even like Dune, I've never read Dune, but I imagine like that's so like if you've
Now,
read
I
that or
did
if you
read the
read it
book,
to
or
10,
I listened to the book before I saw it.
but there's so much like there that and it's so imaginative and so out there that and the movies are almost perfect and for at least from someone who hasn't seen read the books, but I imagine maybe that's why they're so great is because they did such a good job nailing it. But I imagine like that would be I mean obviously we saw it with Lynch. I mean I mean it's so hard to like I don't know, you know what I'm saying. It's such a
It's hard,
difficult task
yeah,
because so
because
much of reading is in your own head.
it means so much to so many different people across generations, right?
Yeah.
Like it's hard to deliver a story that means so much to so many people for many different reasons.
Yeah, and
It's
the put so much pressure on performances because they
Mhm.
cannot because in books when you have a the whole thing is a narrative and the whole thing is exposition with far less dialogue than a movie. You start to you're the performance in your brain, and your brain is a great actor. You can, like, you just get in this person's shoes, you start thinking the way they do. It's black and white on paper of how they're feeling and what they're thinking about, and like it could be like a paragraph of like feelings that I mean, Timothy Chalamet has to like portray with his eyes without his voice. I mean, because if you get into explaining how someone feels, now you're doing like exposition dump. This sucks. This is lazy.
Mhm.
Whatever. But if I mean, and that's the difference in a knock out of the park performance and a mediocre performance. But it puts
Yeah.
a lot of pressure on someone. That's going to be
Yeah.
very difficult to uphold.
Yeah. And this isn't even based off a book. It's
Right.
imaginations that people have of creating these worlds, and how do you live up to that? And I think now that we're 25 years removed, those expectations and those sets of, standards have been changed, because the people that were kids when this came out love it. And you could see that shift, because the prequels were really disliked up until even before The Force Awakens. There wasn't a lot of people defending the prequels. You could see it. A very vocal minority of people defended the prequels in 2015. And you started to see a shift really in 2016. And then in 2017, it really took hold with the release of The Last Jedi. You saw like a reappreciation from people who didn't like the prequels coming around to it, because I
Yeah.
think that generation that were older than me, but were starting to have kids, were starting to introduce their kids to Star Wars, and seeing it through their eyes gave them a different perspective.
Yeah, I could see that.
Being able to tap into your childhood, and maybe that's part of the explanation. Another part of the explanation is also like, well, I had all these expectations, and they've changed. And then there's also people who are just like, you know what, I don't hate them, I don't like them now. I still don't like them, but I don't hate them as much as I used to.
Yeah, Star Wars fans just get so offended.
Easily.
They so offended. It's like, man, it's just a fun movie, man. Quit being so bummed out that it didn't. That this. I mean, I find myself guilty of it occasionally, being a little too curmudgeonous about Star Wars, and I really intentionally try to pull myself back and be like, hey, man, relax. They were '50s moped racers. Who cares? Take a step back and enjoy the episode.
The Vespa
Yeah.
Vespas.
You know, just watch it and enjoy it. Laugh, enjoy the magic.
Yeah, yeah. Star Wars has always been a bit hokey and cheesy and ridiculous, and introducing these big swings in terms of storytelling, and then, with little build up to it, and then fleshing it out in extended material, which is again why I love Star Wars so much, because it's like you can just take it as at face value, or you can dive into it and you can really enjoy this world by gaining all this knowledge, because there's so much expanded material. And as I always say, whenever we talk about Star Wars on this show, that's part of the magic of Star Wars, but also Alex and Molly Damon
Yeah,
and the people at Force Center. Those people are like my favorite when it comes
I
to
know they're
Star Wars
great. They're
stuff. They're
great.
freaking
They
great.
just if you don't have a friend to talk it out with like that, you got Alex and Molly
Yeah.
and to
And
listen to and
I
get
don't
get
know,
nerdy as you want.
I don't know if you listen to Force Center, Force
I
Center
have
podcast.
before.
Joseph Scrimshaw and Ken Knapsack, and uh, it, it's it,
They
it
collaborate a
it's
lot too with
yeah,
Alex and Molly.
and they're great. They're great too.
Yeah, I it was I I told you about it. I did trivia. This just reminded me of it real quick about Jar Jar. I did trivia on May the 4th at a neighborhood bar here. I did it by myself. Did okay. Didn't come in the top three. And one of
We
the
came
I
in
think the team that
sixth, if that
won
makes you feel better.
the team that won their team name was Jar Jar Drinks, which I thought was great. But and one
Nice.
other thing, I don't want to. We're talking about Star Wars. This can turn into an 8-hour thing, so
Yeah.
we can move on here in a minute. But you mentioned like the Star Wars being hokey or for kids or and then expanded material and stuff like that. That it's another thing that makes it great because I mean Dave Filoni, I know this isn't about that, but it's just we're talking Star Wars, but he does this great job of understanding what Star Wars should be about and understanding the heart of it, and then still trying to care about the fans and even the fans that are being impossible. He's like, well, let me see if I can like. There's just so much material now, and while that can be, Marvel hasn't particularly handled that well, but Star Wars I think has handled it much better in terms of the extra material, and
Well,
there's
yeah.
been material for everybody. I mean, you can go even more childish with like young Jedi adventures,
Hmm.
or and then you got another level of like Bad Batch, and then that might be too childish for some people, but it might be great for everybody. It fills in a few
This
gaps,
season,
whatever.
the great thing about Bad Batch is it aged up too. Like
Yeah,
each season, it got darker and darker.
yeah. Then you got with Omega, but then you've got just your traditional, very close to the movies type stuff. But then you got stuff like Andor, and Andor kind of takes a more adult approach to it. It has a little bit more of like an espionage
Yeah.
thriller type vibe to it, and like that might be for you if you're annoyed with Jar Jar. I mean, okay, but you also might be annoyed with young Jedi's little cat person. I don't know what they are. I've never seen that one, but yeah. But now we've got Andor, and that's like a
Well, I
that's
mean this, and
what people can act like Winter Soldier is in Marvel.
oh god, it's a political spy thriller. It's a superhero movie with political spy thriller elements. Calm down. It's not 3 Days of the Condor. Let's relax a minute. But no, you're right about Andor. I say this and I don't mean it in a. It sounds so passive aggressive, but there's no better way to describe it. It is the perfect show for people who are upset that Star Wars didn't grow up with them.
Yeah,
It's the perfect show for those people.
yeah.
And I know this has become a larger discussion about Star Wars as a whole because of the reception of this movie. And we'll get back to the Phantom Menace here in a minute. But I think by and large, like the reappreciation of this movie has made me very, very happy.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
would say.
it's good for everything. I think I agree.
Yeah. But let's get into some fun facts, Walker. Got a
Yeah.
couple to talk about here. Liam Neeson was so eager to be in the film that he signed on without having read the script.
Well, that's thank God he's good in it. I'm not super familiar. I mean, the only thing beforehand is Schindler. I don't know much of his work other than that before. I know he's been in a million things, but that's the only thing I like know about
Schindler's
before that.
List, Next to Kin, and what was that other movie he did? Dark Man. Well, like the things I remember him for.
Yeah, I haven't seen those, but I mean, he's obviously incredible in Schindler. So
Yeah.
I mean, he's a good actor. I mean, it's and he fits well into this stoic this why he fits the bill.
He's the ultimate Jedi. You want to say it. You know you do.
Oh, he's your favorite Jedi, isn't he?
Yeah.
Or is
Not my
he
favorite not my favorite character, but he's my favorite Jedi.
okay?
By far. It's not even close.
Mhm.
When fully dressed and in makeup, Natalie Portman and Keira Knightley resemble each other so much that even Knightley's mother, Charmin McDonald, who visited the set, had trouble identifying her own daughter. And that is true. Like when they put on the makeup, it's when they were younger, it's hard. Like
Well, no, I mean, to be honest with you, what's Keira Knightley's Pirates? That's a big thing of hers.
oh yeah.
Watching Pirates, I mean, I mean, I liked movies, but I wasn't looking at IMDb for like a while in Pirates. It was like, hey, Johnny Depp, you got Natalie Portman, and I was like, I mean, that's Natalie Portman. I thought it was Natalie Portman the entire time. And then afterwards, it was
They
like,
do
that's
look
a
similar.
different person. And it blew my mind. I mean, I don't know how old I was, 15 or something, but I was like, that's a different person. And then later, rewatching Phantom, Phantom Menace, I saw. If someone said Phantom to you, do you think Phantom Menace or Phantom of the Opera? If someone just shorthand was like, have you ever seen Phantom?
My mind is constantly
Phantom
on
Menace. You're just
Star
on Star
Wars.
Wars roll. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it's either that or it's Ben Affleck. You were the bomb in Phantoms, you know.
So I when I rewatched it, I was like looking at people, and I was like, God, that is that. Wait, is that like just I hadn't seen it in 10 years at that point. It's like, wait, is that really her? Or is that her? I forgot this like little switch up here because the first time watching it, you don't know. It's a twist, right?
Yeah, it's supposed to be a twist. I picked up on it pretty early, but
Well, I mean, you might have picked up on it when you were 5. It took me till I was 17, but it was watching it. I was like, oh, that's not her. They look alike, or is she playing both roles? Is it just thing? I looked it up. I was like, oh, that's Keira Knightley. I was like, they do look alike. They're the same person. And
they
then
look.
Rose Byrne's one of them too, isn't it? Or is she?
She's in episode 2 and 3 as the handmaiden. I think
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
she's
I
not
don't know. It's
playing.
interesting.
She's not playing Sabe.
Yeah, I got into it's similar. I got into a big argument with friends at one point about Tobey Maguire and Jake Gyllenhaal. I thought they looked similar, and I was like,
It's
I
because
was like,
they did.
I get them mixed
They
up
played
all the
brothers
time.
in a
I'm not
movie.
sure. And then the next like month, everyone was like, they don't look anything alike. And the next month, it was like Jake Gyllenhaal, Tobey Maguire, and brothers. And I was like, you motherfucker! I was like, I told you they look alike. Like, yeah,
Speaking of
why would
Tobey
they even get
Maguire,
hired as brothers?
speaking of Tobey Maguire, you felt probably like that song from Spider-Man 2 by Dashboard Confessional. Vindicated. Yeah.
It's funny.
According to Jake Lloyd, there was a 6-hour cut of the film that was screened for several people before the film was released, with those who saw it proclaiming it to be a mind bogglingly good film. Like the later lost cut of Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope, this cut was never released to the public, and good. I'm usually a proponent for, director's cuts. I love
Power cuts.
director's cuts. I think often, yeah, I think
I'm just,
oftentimes, what you say,
I was just
Snyder
making fun
cuts.
of the Snyder cuts. Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
6 hour different versions of the movie. I'm just joking. I know that was
no.
better.
I mean, I can't deny. I'm a fan of the Snyder's the director's cuts. His director's cuts are always better, but and most of the time I like director's cuts. But with this, 6 hours, no. And like with Star Wars, I just like the versions we get. I don't like doing, especially time travel in Star Wars or different multiverses and Star Wars. Like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. I just want the story. I don't need a bunch of cuts or anything like that.
Yeah, I agree.
Darth Maul doesn't show up until about almost half an hour mark and only speaks a total of 3 lines, spending almost all of his 8.5 minutes of screen time either listening, walking, or standing quietly or fighting. Maul actually has very memorable, intense monologue about fear that was used in TV spots but never actually made it into the final movie. I remember those TV spots. Furthermore, Peter Serafinowicz has stated in an interview that he actually recorded more dialogue for Maul that never ended up in the movie. And what's funny is, as a kid, I could always mark it at every time, the 3 times you see Palpatine when he goes to Newt Gunray and all those people.
Mm-hmm.
It's the third time that they go back to them that he goes, "This is my apprentice, Darth Maul." When he comes in and folds his arms like this.
Yeah,
It's always a third time. I always remember that as a kid. It's like, third time's a charm because I always thought Darth Maul was really, really cool.
I think it's cool too. I I'm interested in the other dialogue. I'm interested in what he had to say and stuff, but I also kind of like the leave me wanting more aspect of it. Like he's
And they,
mysterious
they
and
gave
dark
us
and
more.
interesting. Yeah. Oh
Thank,
yeah. Well, you talking about
thankfully.
when and
Yeah. One of the greatest character arcs in all of Star Wars. It's Darth Maul. He has it. And if you only see episode 1, you wouldn't know. Right?
sure.
But there's so much. Ewan McGregor once stated that before filming began, he and Liam Neeson were taken to a private room where 2 Lucasfilm employees approached them with a long, locked wooden box. When opened, they saw 20 various lightsaber hilts that were being allowed to choose from to be their character's official weapon for the movie. Ewan then went on to explain that George Lucas only wanted to allow them a rush 10 minutes to decide on which design they wanted because George believed that actors should connect with their hilts through feeling and not through study. Listen, one of my life's fantasies or dreams is that George Lucas takes me to a room and it's like, all right, here's a box of lightsaber hilts. I want you to pick your specific lightsaber hilt. I want that to happen one day, Walker. It's never going to happen, but
Well,
could you
good things come to
imagine?
those who wait.
Ah, yeah, that's right. Can you imagine being taken to a room and being told you get to pick out your own lightsaber hilt for a movie?
Yes, I can, and I can even more specifically imagine them saying you only have whatever you just said, 5 or 10 minutes,
Yeah, 10 minutes.
and feeling like, no, I need to, I really need to make the right choice here. Like, no, you just got to feel it, and being very frustrated by that. I can
I
certainly
would be
imagine.
okay with that because
I
I
like it.
tend
I
to,
like it
if I
because
think
I would
about
get
things,
analysis paralysis. I mean, even
that's
given
the
the
thing.
four options in the build my own lightsaber, I mean, I was like, dude, I don't know what to do. I have no idea which one to pick, and I I would have a hard time with it. So I'm glad. It's probably the best, but I think I would be frustrated with it at the time.
Limiting me to 10 minutes is perfect because much like you, I would overthink the hell out of it and I would be like, well, I like this one, but this one's really cool, but you know what, like that one feels better, but you know what, that one, it's growing on me. Like it would be too much. Pick
Yeah.
out one and stick with it, and that's what I do. And if you actually watch the behind the scenes stuff, you can see the moment where Obi-Wan or Ewan McGregor um, picks out the lightsaber he wants. It's really
Mm.
cool. And the behind the scenes stuff on this. The behind the scenes stuff, by the way, guys, if you haven't watched it, I recommend. It is fascinating. It is really good. During the first week of the first trailer's release, many theaters reported on 75% of the audiences paying full price for a movie than walking out after the Star Wars Episode 1 trailer was shown. And the first trailer for the Phantom Menace, it debuted November 20th, 1998, in 75 theaters across the United States and Canada, with films like Meet Joe Black, Waterboy, and Siege.
That's funny. I kind of like that stat. That's funny. I would. That's kind of a 1999 thing to do.
Again, you can look up,
1998 thing to
you
do.
could you could see the footage of it and just see like the response that people were having. It was like, I joke. How I joke about people's reaction to like Across the Spider Verse. You would have thought that it was the second coming of Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
This was very similar.
it's funny.
Very, very similar. Liam Neeson convinced George Lucas to keep a scene where Qui-Gon Jinn puts his hand on Shmi Skywalker's shoulder. Lucas felt this might be out of character for a monk-like Jedi, but Neeson thought that there should be an emotional connection between the characters. In an interview with Premiere Magazine, Neeson defended his actions, saying, "It may be Star Wars, but we got to have something in there for the adults." But you know, I don't think it's just for the adults. I also think it's for the kids there too, right? Because like that little moment, that little action in terms of story perfectly encapsulates why Qui-Gon Jinn would have been the better mentor for Anakin because
Yeah.
he listens to his gut and he responds to the force. It's not this rigid structured, this is how we have to do this. It's, you know, the epitome of what a real Jedi is supposed to be, which is having feeling and compassion for others and not necessarily being so strict and rigid to a code. Um, Little moments like that show why he would have been the better teacher for Anakin, and also if he would have not died in Duel of the Fates, he would have been the father figure that Anakin needed, and he wouldn't have gone to the dark side.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even quite understand the something in there for the adults aspect of it.
I don't either.
I think it's kind of a I think it's I mean, it's still kind of a cold moment. Like when Anakin leaves, it's still. I mean, it just is what it is, and you know how the story's going to go and stuff. But it's it's always been kind of a gosh, like like that's tough. You just kind of like within 5 minutes, just picking up and going. And I know they add some emotion in there to make it more emotional and heartfelt and more understandable. But it's still a little of a bit of a cold moment, and like in just terms of like sad. I mean, in terms of the mother son aspect of it, and him just leaving and be worried about Shmi. I think it makes it. I mean, just more human. I guess. I think it
Yeah,
just makes everything just feel like less. I mean, it's what I'm saying. It would be worse. It would be
not
even more.
robotic, more
Yeah.
like human, more feeling, and more caring, more
Yeah.
compassion. Earlier drafts of the script placed more emphasis on the character of Obi Wan Kenobi. Originally, he was already a full Jedi by the start of the movie, and also the only Jedi negotiator sent to Naboo. In this movie, or in this same draft, the character of Qui Gon Jinn was not introduced until the character reached Coruscant, and the character was the same age as Obi Wan, not his mentor. And also in the same version of the script for this movie, oh, I think it's Anakin's 12, so he's
Mm.
slightly older. They decreased the age a little bit because George Lucas thought it would be more impactful for a 9-year-old to be taken away from his mom as opposed to a 12-year-old. I still think,
Yeah.
regardless, you take him away at 12, you take him away at 9, it's still hard. But I understand the reasoning behind at 9 because that's young. 12 is young too, but like you're about to be a teenager. 9 is still like, oh my god, like that's still pretty young.
Yeah.
I do like the change of, you know, Phantom Menace. Once you really examine the prequels, it ends happily, but it is a tragedy because Qui-Gon Jinn dies in that duel of the fates, and has Dave Filoni so eloquently put in that, behind the scenes of The Mandalorian, it's the duel of the fate for Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah.
Because if he ends up with Obi-Wan, Obi-Wan does not like Anakin in this movie. George
Mm-mm.
Lucas has stated that. Like, he doesn't really like him. And it becomes much more of a brother brother relationship as opposed to a father son relationship that Anakin needed. And that is kind of the tragedy of this movie. So making Obi-Wan younger, I think, actually works better for the overall story.
Yeah, I agree. I think it does too. I think it also makes his like abilities and intelligence and everything stand out that much more too.
Yeah, because he comes across as, pretty. He's not as like quippy and snarky as he normally is in this
Yeah. He's
movie,
capable.
but there's quite a few times, calls Anakin a worthless is not a worthless life form, but he calls him a what now?
I don't remember. I know the scene you're talking about.
Yeah, it's like a pathetic life form. Yeah, calls
Well,
him a pathetic. Why do I get the feeling that we've picked up another pathetic life form? You know, but yeah, I agree. He's capable of the snark. The negotiations were short. This was fascinating. Scenes of straightforward dialogue may be comprised of up to 6 layers of computer composited imagery, as the following example shows. In one scene, Natalie Portman's best take had been, take 7, while Jake Lloyd's was take 1. And they would take those two takes and splice them together. And there were several instances where they did this in the movie, and there was also like in the behind the scenes, you can see them as they do that. And it's pretty crazy.
hmm.
Like that's
Wow.
wild. They splice it
Yes.
and it's seamless.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. The Nemodians were originally envisioned as an organic version of the battle droids, which would have required CGI. But to save cost, a mere 12 weeks before shooting was about to commence, they were changed into actors wearing masks. The original CGI design for the Nemodians wasn't entirely discarded as it was used as the basis of Geonosians in Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones. So that's a pretty good look. And then also, since the Geonosians are the ones who create the battle droids, it makes sense for them to look like them,
Yeah, that
not
does
the
make sense.
Neimoidians.
That does make sense.
Ahmad Best was the first actor to play a completely computer generated supporting character. The credit usually goes to Andy Serkis as Gollum and Lord of the Rings or Two Towers instead, but that's not the case. It was actually Ahmad Best. He was the godfather of performance capture.
It's very cool. I love their his recent revival too as a Jedi.
I do too.
And
So freaking awesome.
speaking of Andy Serkis, man, I've been watching Apes all week. It's so good. I think that franchise is it's very good and underseen. I don't know how much money they're making. I guess they're making a lot, so I guess they are seen, but no one I know has seen them. I think they're
No, they're
so good.
great.
Sorry, I need to get
I
off on
love that
that.
original. I love that original trilogy. And real quick, for those people who have seen Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, what a wonderful day! Yeah, good movie.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. I think I'm trying to see it maybe today or tomorrow.
You'll like it. You'll appreciate it. The film was criticized for its, by many fans for its perceived overuse of computer generated sets and special effects, but in reality, more miniature sets and props were made for this film than for the original trilogy combined. The same goes for episode 2 and episode 3. I will say, out of the prequels, this one still looks the best. Like, there's still some CGI that doesn't look as great. It doesn't hold up as well, but this one does feel more practical, like the worlds that they're in, the spaces that they're in, as opposed to episode 2 and episode 3, which feel completely computer generated.
I think I agree completely. This one, I mean, I understand why I mean, there's definitely like a feeling of CGI. There's just so much more that's
There's a
like,
sleekness to this one as opposed to the original
yeah,
trilogy that you talked
yeah,
about.
it's just less tangible feeling, and and I do think I think this movie could be described as beautiful and visually stunning and things like that, and in the same breath, slightly critical of the CGI that's used or aged. I mean,
Yeah.
and I will say that felt stronger to me more recently, more than usual, because I saw it in theaters and kind of the big screen. This was one of the first experiences that I've been like, this one kind of holds up better on a TV. I don't know. Like, it was like, it got like the, I mean, that's not exactly true. I mean, I still think the visual stunning parts were still visually stunning and even more so on a big screen, but some of the CGI was more pronounced in the theater.
Yeah,
And
and it's
it
25
was,
years old too.
I know.
It's not going to age as well. This is the highest
But
grossing film of
Apes,
the.
on the other hand, Apes looks
Yeah.
it's interesting. That's I hate. I know I'd hate to interrupt this and say that. I can't not give it its credit. I'm so in the mood of it for it right now. That looks unbelievable. It's one of the best looking things I've ever seen.
Never won an Academy Award for visual effects. It's a shame.
Oh,
Always
I'm sorry.
nominated, but never won. Highest grossing film of the prequel trilogy and the highest grossing film of 1999. It's still
No
crazy to
surprise
me
there.
that this is the highest grossing film of the prequels. I thought, you know, Revenge of the Sith would take the cake, but it didn't. I think
Mm,
that movie grossed in the 900 millions. It got close. It was like
mm,
Oppenheimer. It got close. Practically $1 billion film, but it didn't quite get there. Episode
gotcha.
2 was in like the 600 millions, I think, which that was a packed summer. It was Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
So that came out and that kind of rocked the world, and it was the first movie to ever gross $100 million in one weekend, which is insane
Gotcha.
to think about. But yeah, highest grossing movie of 1999 makes sense. Last fun fact we'll get to here: at the time of its release, it was the second highest grossing film worldwide of all time after Titanic, and I think there was some disappointment Not in terms of how much it grossed, because it grossed a lot of money. I mean, this movie was almost a billion, or at the time was almost $1 billion, or it was $1 billion. Like it grossed $1 billion. That's an insane amount of money.
Right.
People thought that this would beat Titanic, and no, Titanic held that spot until James Cameron decided to beat himself. So, but yep, doesn't surprise me. Doesn't surprise me one bit. All right, guys. Well, let's go ahead and move on to the award section. First off, with best scenes and moments, and usually I like to edit myself to like 10. I couldn't. It's so hard. Sometimes I struggle. Newt Gunray cancels negotiations. And I mean, this scene was so cool. I used to reenact the stabbing through the door and twisting it. How is he doing this? This is impossible. And you hear the Force theme come through. Where are those droidecads? Yeah, so awesome.
Sound a little like Lando there.
A little bit. The Force racing too, or not racing, but the Force dashing, whatever you want to call it.
Speed, Jedi speed, Force
Jedi
speed.
Yeah, never to be seen again.
That's weird.
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent. Now get out of here. One of the greatest lines ever.
Yeah, that's funny.
Qui-Gon Jinn, low-key savage.
Yeah. He's got some quip in him.
I feel like that's something you would say. And I feel like that is something you have said to me before.
No, I wouldn't.
Swim to Ato Gunga, aka the Gunga City.
Dude, I used to want those things that like the miniature scuba
The
tanks or
rebreathers.
whatever. I thought, first of all, I was like, where are they, at Brookstone or at Sharper Emmett? Like I assume they exist. And I don't know. I don't know if anybody, I mean, I don't know if James Bond's done that before or something like that. It just feels like such a, oh yeah, that's a thing. And I used to want one so bad. Did they make a toy out of it? That would be sick if they did.
I don't know if they did. Guys, comment section. Let us know if they made a toy of this and if we can get one. Because I totally will.
Honestly, there's this thing called the lung tank. Have you ever heard of it?
Yeah.
It's basically a snorkel that you pump with like a bicycle pump, and you fill it up real quick, and then it's just a snorkel that you can go under with and breathe for like 20 minutes underwater. And you can just refill it with a bike pump. It's sick. And it's like, it's more like this big, kind of like it's like a snorkel with a tank like this big on it, but it's the closest thing I've seen to it, which
that's really freaking cool.
Yeah.
I used to mimic this swimming in the pool, Jar Jar's swim technique. The wide kick. Yeah. I used to do that often.
It's fun.
Escape from Naboo.
Is this the there's always a bigger fish? Or is this
No, that's the going through the planet core. This is when they're sneaking across the ledge, and then they get Princess Amidala, and then they take the flight, and then they go out of there. You get introduced to R2D2.
Yeah, okay, I remember. Yep. This is before really cool. They land on Tatooine. Yep.
Joe generator's been hit. Yeah. Yep. Really cool sequence. Anakin meets Padme. Are you an angel? Like, I know people hate this sequence, but honestly, again, he's 9. He has a crush on her. Of course he's going to say something like this. It makes perfect sense.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
You're just like, yeah, sure.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't hate it as much. I don't hate it at all. I don't hate it at all. It's
very sweet. I mean, it doesn't come across as, I've heard, to me, at least, it comes across as he has a crush on her. She being like 16 years old or 14 years old or however old she is in this movie, thinks it's cute.
I agree. Yeah.
It's not reciprocated. Yeah. It's just she thinks it's cute.
Sure. I agree.
Dinner table sequence.
Dude, I filmed the tongue part, the frog tongue that Jar Jar. He's like, don't do that again. I
Don't do that
filmed
again.
it during the when I was in the theater to send to Jess. I just think that part's so funny. He does it as soon as he does it the
It's
once, you always remember it's about to happen again, and I just start laughing, and then I'm just like waiting for it, and he's like, "Don't do that again."
it again reminds me of my dog Baloo, like to a T. I love
Yeah,
it. That part's great, but I love its showing the compassion and the willingness to like help that Anakin has. He's a special little boy,
yeah,
which makes it that much more tragic when you get to Episode 3. Um, Anakin's father, or lack thereof, is revealed, which I know causes some, or at least at the time, caused some, some upset feelings from the fans. He's pretty much kind of like a messiah figure. He has no father. He's a child of the Force.
yeah,
But it adds a wrinkle and it adds much more lore and depth to it. And I mean, none of that is mentioned in the original trilogy whatsoever. You know,
yeah, yeah.
Qui-Gon gets the metachlorian count for Anakin over 20,000. It's more than Master Yoda.
This gets a lot of hate.
Yeah, it does.
I think
People
a
hate.
lot of people think it's like over explaining, adding like elements of sci-fi into it, and unneeded.
No.
I don't mind it really.
No, because all it is not saying, oh, only special people can have the Force. No, Star Wars clearly states that anyone can tap into the Force at any point in time. Metachlorians or midichlorians, all they are is like a potential gauger, right? That's all it is. You are more sensitive to it. You are more sensitive to the Force. It doesn't automatically mean you're the best Jedi ever. I mean, Anakin's potential was that he was the strongest, but because he turned to the dark side, became Darth Vader, that didn't happen. He never reached his potential. You know that
Right.
is that's all it is. Is it's a potential gauger, and it's a way of scientifically explaining the Force, but it doesn't take away from the magic of it all. Anyone can still tap into the Force. Anyone can become a Jedi. You know,
Yeah,
I
it doesn't bother me nearly as much as it bothered. It doesn't bother me at all, really. I mean,
yeah,
I do sometimes. There's been a time to time where it feels like not necessarily this movie is not what I mean, but it feels like things they have like a pressure to like explain things, and I don't think they need to explain it, or I don't think they need to dive that deep into like explaining how you got this trinket in the original
yeah,
trilogy or how. Sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's cool. I do think there's occasionally too much of that. Occasionally, it's not. I don't. It doesn't bother me much, but this wasn't one of them. This doesn't. This
no,
seems reasonable.
yeah, I completely agree. The pod race,
This is going to be a front runner for me. This one, I
yeah,
love the pod race. I love the
pod
pod
race is
race. It's
sick.
probably one of it's either this or another one, and it's definitely one of the things I remember most about the movie and the scene. It's long,
It's
and
about
it's
10
the
minutes
scene
long.
that I get really excited about. I love the game. I want the game. I am in the market for a Nintendo 64 right now,
I mean,
and
they've
I Pod Racer is on the top 5 games I'm getting.
do you have a PS4 or PS5?
No, I've got a Xbox One.
Okay, they released the Pod Racer for PS4 and I in the summer of 2020 and I got it. And
Really,
I play it pretty often.
that's
It's
sick.
so much fun. It's so much fun.
Yeah,
That was
I
a
definitely
game I
like
played
that
all the
game.
time as a kid on the N64. Definitely a
Gosh,
many of wrestling matches me and my brother got into over the game. I would say fights, but me and my brother, we never really fought. It was always just like we loved each other so much we didn't want to hurt each other, so it just turned into like a silly like wrestling, kind of thing.
no,
But Pod Race is excellent. This also features one of your favorite characters, Ben Quadranaris. Could you tell us
yes, it
exactly
does.
why you love that character so much?
I just think more than any other character in the saga, I would imagine he experiences probably the most diversity
Yeah,
with his pod blowing up, and then or adversity. I don't know. That's a diversity, adversity,
adversity.
and and he doesn't. he doesn't need a lot of sparkle. He doesn't need a lot of shine. He's not a spotlight stealer. But if you pay attention through some of the Clone Wars, some of the maybe even in some of the other movies hidden in there, you'll see he eventually finds success. He finds success, and it's just I don't know, it's a feel good story. You know, he
Would you
started
say
off.
that? Would you say that he has the best character arc in all of Star Wars?
Oh gosh, no, I don't think I'm gonna say the best, but
Okay, okay.
I can tell you he's not getting the respect he deserves, and I can sense it in this conversation too.
No, no way. Being totally genuine right now. My favorite thing from this sequence is when that one alien that I'm forgetting his name, someone definitely knows it, when he crashes it and he goes, "Arr!" You know what I'm talking about?
I
Arr!
think so.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah,
Just
great
it's a
sequence,
good
man.
scene. Yeah, it
Had
really
the
is. You get to see Jabba the
had the
Hutt.
action figure as a kid where it has the handle in the middle and you could just do like this with it. I think it's on sale on Amazon right now for like $80. And let me tell you, the temptation for Mr. Ben Davis to get that is real, but I'm pretty sure Carly would kill me. Maybe not kill me, but it would not go well. Spend
No.
$80 on that. Qui-Gon picks up Anakin slash frees him slash Anakin leaves his mother. You talked about this a little bit earlier. We don't have to expand upon it a whole lot, but I will say, like, the scene where he runs back to his mom and says, "I just can't do it, Mom. I can't do it." And she's, he says, "I don't want things to change, but you can't stop the change, more than you can stop the sun from setting. You just have to embrace the change. What does your heart tell you? Will you see me again?" It's very, very touching. And for a franchise that really focuses a lot on father son connections,
Mhm.
this really hits that mother son connection really well. Because that is something that I want Star Wars to do. I want like a Jedi master that's a woman to have a Padawan that's a guy or a boy or whatever, and see what that dynamic is like. Explore that mother son relationship a little bit more because Star Wars doesn't do that often.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, that is nice.
No,
It is definitely one of the most emotional beats in the movie. Maybe probably the most emotional beat in the movie. I know there's other things that happen that are obviously sad and tough, but this one, I think this one probably touches me the most.
yeah. Padme comforts Anakin. Again, I think this scene is cute. Like
Hmm.
she's upset and she gets comfort from comforting him. And
Cold in space.
yeah, it's cold in space. She goes, it's a little too warm from where you're from, if you ask me. And she puts like a blanket on him, and you can clearly tell that he has like a crush on her. She thinks it's cute, and she's just trying to comfort him.
They sell
Really
that
sweet.
little necklace thing at Disney. Forgot
Yeah,
what it's called.
I love that necklace, man. I think I had one as a kid. I think, and they show it at the end of episode 3 too, when she's at her funeral. She's still holding it. Really sad. Qui-Gon tells Jedi Council about the possible threat of a Sith Lord slash encountering Anakin Skywalker, which is also, I think this is where they mention the Chosen One prophecy. You talk about the prophecy that talks about, the one that will bring balance to the Force. So they introduced that nugget, which is a big
Yeah.
swing because, again, it's not something they mention in the original trilogy.
Right. Yeah, and it's also it's right after a nice little Darth Maul scare.
Yeah.
Anakin, jump! Anakin, down!
Yeah. Anakin. Yeah. There's a cool little deleted scene that explains why they're running. They see that Sith droid, they take it out, and then he's like, "All right, we got to get out of here. They know we're here."
Hmm.
But I like this scene because you also get introduced to the Jedi Council, and you notice that they're pretty cold. They're
Hmm.
not very loving or affectionate, which leads into the and my next scene, which is Anakin gets tested by the Jedi Council. They are so dismissive of like meeting him. Like Mace Windu's just like, just send him in, whatever. Like, okay, I got so
Yeah.
much stuff to do.
A couple of them are just assholes. I mean, they're tough to they're tough cookies to crack, and they really are very, like you said, cold. Uh, this is a tough, from seeing Jedi, what we see in the original trilogy, and then the sequel trilogy, and then this one, and then what I've read a little bit about in the High Republic era, and maybe what we'll see soon in the Acolyte. This version of the Jedi is very kind of confused and lost. It feels,
Yeah,
or just scared.
they become so rigid in their ways that they forget that they actually have to listen to the force, feel, don't think. And they become so, it's weird that, they talk about fear is the path to the dark side, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering, or fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. It
Suffering.
feels like suffering. Yeah, it feels like they're in such turmoil that they themselves are, like you said, confused. And I think that that is a perfect word for them because their confusion leads for the rise of Palpatine. Don't get it twisted. Jedi are still the good guys, but they're flawed, and I think it's appropriate to explore the faults of our heroes.
I agree.
The final battle, in particular, Duel of the Fates. Like I love the stuff with the Gungans versus the droids. The stuff with Anakin is silly. Maybe twisting this will help. It's silly, but it's still pretty cool. Especially when I was watching that as a 5-year-old, I was like, oh my god, I could actually be part of the battle. This is so cool. Like this was really cool for me when I watched it as a kid. But stuff with Padme is great. It's the Duel of the Fates. This lightsaber duel made my head explode because
Yes.
before this, you had great duels. In particular, like the emotionality of the Vader versus Luke in Episode 6 is great. The actual duel itself in Episode 5 is awesome because it's just Vader toying with Luke the entire time. Episode 4, whatever. This one is like it is on it's lightsaber dueling on steroids.
Yeah, I find this one to be one of the best. I mean, top couple.
Probably
It's
number
got
2
the,
for me.
what's number one?
Anakin or Obi-Wan, man.
Okay,
No question.
so this one to me finds that perfect mix of great choreography. So it's a step up from I mean, both thematically and visually and stuff. It was a step up for me from the originals, just because it was the choreography was great, the intensity was great, the creativity of the double lightsaber, everything like that was really cool. Obviously, the stakes at hand are big, but they're usually big. But it wasn't so over the top that, like, we got Yoda jumping all around the Senate and doing backflips and stuff like that and go boop, boop, crazy stuff. Which I'm not anti. I don't mind it. I like lightsabers are always my favorite part, but this one was just kind of a mix of both worlds that found this perfect area within the music is just
Yeah.
unstoppable.
Cora, da, da, da. Yeah, it's great. Da, 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 da. Yeah,
It's good.
it's wonderful. Obi-Wan tells Yoda he will train Anakin. I love the defiance that Obi-Wan actually has here.
Yeah, I like it too. It's mean it gives Obi Jesus, it gives Qui Gon's death a little more weight. That it, like, because Obi Wan doesn't necessarily agree with what he's saying. I mean, the council agrees with him, does
No,
not, but neither does Obi Wan. I don't think.
no, but he's doing it because he's doing it out of respect and love for his teacher. He's not doing it because he cares about this boy, even though he does learn and grow to care about Anakin clearly. It doesn't start out that way. This is just in pure defiance for his master. And then Qui-Gon Jinn's funeral. Like it's an emotional part. Anakin's confused. What's going to happen to me now? I'm going to train you, dude. It's all right. I got you. But it's also like, you know, Always two there are, a master and apprentice. Well, which one was destroyed, the master or the apprentice? And you get that slow pan to old Sheev.
Yeah, I mean it's a good scene. It's a great scene. It just feels like a lot more is to come, and we've got we're only getting started here, and it's got good chills and a little bit of lore Sith wise.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's great part. Favorite scenes, Duel of the Fates.
yeah, it's probably Duel of the Fates with a real special caveat to the pod racing. I mean, I really
Yeah.
enjoy the pod race, and
Love this
I
the sound of Sebulba's vents.
yeah,
Love that.
it's great. The sound design of this is really good. It's it is definitely Duel of the Fates. I mean, it's that's fantastic, but the pod racing is just a shining star in this movie. I think it's creative, it's
Mm,
fun, it's also it sounds great, it looks pretty good. I mean, it's a scene I look forward to every time.
agree.
Great game based off it too.
Oh, fantastic game. Worst scenes and moments. It's a very boring crawl.
Yeah, it's like a Congress bill or
Yeah,
something.
it's very boring. The pod race commentary,
What, the two
hate it.
headed?
Yeah, even as a kid, even as a kid, I didn't like it.
Yeah, it's funny.
Padme builds a bridge between the Gungas. I do not mind this. I don't mind that. I love that because it fits the theme of the story. The problem is like I ask you to help us. No, I beg you to help us. Like the flat delivery of
Yeah,
that is so
flat.
like there's no emotion here.
Yeah,
Like
it is rough. You do a good job of mimicking them. It's funny to hear that, and it's like, oh, that is rough to hear.
it is. Anakin's happy little accidents while joining in on the action. Like
I don't like this scene at all.
it's it's so silly. Again, as a kid, I loved it, but watching now, it's like okay, like I'll try turning. Maybe this helps, or
Yeah,
spinning. Maybe this helps.
it's also. I mean, I really like Return of the Jedi when we're going between Luke and Vader to Endor to the space battle, and they're all kind of simultaneously happening together, and like there's stakes on each one, and there's a piece of the pie that has to, they're all relying on each other. I think that's a really great scene in Return of the Jedi.
Hmm.
And this one, it does something similar, but like the tone of it is so, we go from Duel of the Fates, which just feels majestic, and
Yeah,
then we go over to like I don't know what I'm doing. Pew, pew, pew. And then we flip over to Jar Jar getting fucking flopped all around. I was like, what's happening here? I can't quite. Then we're
but
like, oh no,
like
we're serious again. Don't the face.
he's doing similar actions to Anakin. He's like somehow falling into like when it's very Jack Sparrowy,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Jack
yeah.
Sparrow just somehow falling into a win.
Yeah,
Tonally, yeah, I think that's the disconnect. It's like I like each individual sequence, just tonally, you're getting whipped around, and it doesn't feel as cohesive. But I like each individual sequence, and to me, the happy little accidents. It's like this. He's a pilot. You could have written it in that he's a little bit better, but it doesn't really work for me. I think to me, I think it's the delivery Padme gives. It always is like, where's the emotion? It's Natalie Portman, man. She's an amazing actress.
yeah, yeah. I'm gonna go with Anakin and the accidents. I just tend to kind of sigh and roll my eyes a little bit when this part comes up. It's just like, all right, let's get through this.
That's fair. Best performance to me, it's Liam Neeson.
I think I have to agree. I have to agree. I mean, I like Ewan McGregor, and I like Ewan McGregor a lot more in 2 and 3.
Absolutely,
But
yeah, 2 and 3.
Qui Gon, I mean, Liam Neeson. I mean, he's just he's kind of the pillar. You mentioned earlier, like an unclear protagonist. Like the characters are, it's an unusual structure of characters, and Qui-Gon does the best, I think, at shining through as like the pillar of like
Yeah.
what we're holding on to,
I mean,
and he
really,
performs it well too.
it's so weird because it is structurally, if you look at it from a story standpoint, it is Padme's movie. Episode 1 is Padme's movie, but we're following Qui-Gon so much that it also feels like his movie at points, especially because the Anakin of it all.
Yeah,
So, and he does a really good job portraying this character who has become my favorite Jedi. He is the embodiment of a perfect Jedi Knight, in my opinion.
yeah.
Does this make sense of war? There's quite a few here. We'll go through them pretty quickly. How come Qui-Gon says he doesn't sense anything when there's clearly a something up? You know, he doesn't sense that something else is elsewhere and elusive.
Yeah, he must have been. Yeah, I don't know.
He was too much in the here and now, I guess. How come we never
Too
see
many
Jedi
hands on
use
the
the speed?
shoulders. Oh yeah, the super speed, the Jedi super speed.
How come?
It's one of the
Yeah,
biggest
yeah. How
mysteries
come
out
we never
there.
see that? Yeah, I feel like a
I
lot
remember
could
the
have been
first time you see it,
avoided.
you're like, "Whoa!" Now, like that's new.
Yeah, like ooh, that's new. We never see it again. Is Qui-Gon using mind tricks on Boss Nass when getting transport for Jar Jar? Like he keeps waving his hand like he's doing using mind tricks. Have you noticed that?
I don't. I don't think so. No, but I can visualize it, and I. Huh.
Can we get a transport? Like he's doing that. I wonder if he is or isn't. I'm sure someone knows. It never dawned on me to think that until I saw that while watching the movie for the show. I was like, huh,
Hmm.
that's an interesting little detail. How come the droids see the Jedi are clearly carrying the princess in the hangar bay and don't immediately attack them after saying out loud, "We need to free the prisoners"?
I think of the battle droid so much from the uh, the Clone Wars.
Clone Wars. Yeah.
Yeah, and just
Roger, Roger.
how they just go so deep into how dumb they are.
And it makes
They
sense though. Like the way George Lucas talks about him, it's like these are the precursors to the stormtroopers. The stormtroopers aren't great. These guys are even
no, I know.
worse. They're
I like. I mean,
clunky, and they're
I don't mind the
yeah.
battle droids. I'm not saying that. I just mean it's funny how dumb they are.
I agree. I agree. The Royal Starship slash Naboo cruiser gets past the blockade like really easy. It's not a very effective blockade.
No, it's not. Do they mention at all that this is a small enough ship that'll be unnoticeable or anything like that?
I don't think that they do.
Yeah, I don't either. It's a good
They
one.
get past them pretty quickly. How come Qui-Gon doesn't pilot the pod racer?
I guess he can sense that Anakin's capable. I don't know. I mean, Anakin sells him on his
That would that would
abilities.
that would be the thing
Qui-Gon also
that
doesn't give a
tells
shit
me.
once the news comes out that he's never even finished a race. The only person who cares is Padme. Everyone else is like, that's cool. It's fine. He doesn't need
The
to have
look
had.
Padme gives him after he says he's never won is just like a death stare to kill all death stares. Like it is, it is brutal.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. The Queen trusts my judgment. You should too.
Yeah, those lines are always funny. Where it's like, tell the Queen no more requests today.
Well, George Lucas said in the commentary that he knows that Padme, the handmaiden, is the actual queen. He
Yeah.
knows that, and he's like gauging her every time, like kind of poking at her.
Oh, interesting.
Why do people get so pissed about midichlorians? We already kind of dove into that. We don't have to really recover that. How does a vote of no confidence automatically mean there's going to be a new election? Wouldn't that just lead to a lot of different chancellors?
Yeah, I don't. These politics are over my head, but yeah, that feels very convenient for old Sheev.
Yeah. Why did the blockade just let the cruiser through on the way back?
Writing. I don't
I don't know.
know.
Right?
Convenience.
How come Maul didn't just stab Qui-Gon when he jumped down? Remember, he like backhands him, and he falls down and hits his back, and then his lightsaber's on, and Qui-Gon was jumping down. He could have just turned it,
Uh-huh.
right, and it
Yeah.
would have stabbed through him.
No. Yeah.
How come Obi-Wan doesn't use the Force Run to run through the shields as soon as they start up?
Well, at that
Don't
point,
know.
Force Run had expired.
I guess you're allowed to use it once in your life, and that you
Yes,
used
and then
it.
they used it on that blast from the battle from the droids or the crawlers or whatever they were, and it's
Yeah.
expired at that point.
How come Maul doesn't just force push Obi-Wan down the shaft when he's holding on to that thing? He's just cutting the thing back and forth instead of like he already force pushed him once to get down the shaft. He could do it again,
Yeah,
but
there's a
he
bunch of
doesn't.
these.
There is a
Yeah,
bunch of little things, and really you could attribute it to the fact that it's just there's a lot of plot convenience in this movie.
you think the
That does
same
happen.
type of description would happen with the original three? I know we did Return of the Jedi. You think similar
Yeah.
conversations would have? Yeah,
Yeah,
just
I
not
do. I
about that.
think no, no. With each and every trilogy and all nine, there are all sorts of things like this. And I'm sitting here saying all this. You and I are discussing all these things. I bet you there is someone who knows the answer to all of these and are screaming at us right now.
Yeah.
And you know what? Scream away. Write in the comment section, please, some of the answers to some of these questions if you have them. Because it's not us trying to tear the movie down. We clearly really enjoy this movie, especially me. You said you end up on the 60% range, but I love this movie. Tell us
Hmm.
why for these answers, you know? I think instead of just picking one, I'll just say there's just a lot of plot convenience in this movie.
Yeah, I'll say super speed because that really transports into a lot of questions. Like it feels like
Yeah.
that could create I guarantee. I bet I'm gonna look it up after this, but I bet if we go to Star Wars Explained, there's a video about super speed that Alex goes on for about 6 minutes on.
I guarantee you for most of these things, there's videos that I've probably watched that I've just forgotten on all
Yeah.
these that Alex and Molly have done on Star Wars Explained. Again, love that show. Love what those guys do. There's also one that I forgot to mention. I forgot to write down, and I have the answer to this, at least in my head. How come Obi-Wan doesn't force heal Qui-Gon when he gets
Yeah.
stabbed? Because that's
What's the
been a
answer?
thing that's been happening. The answer is that Qui-Gon gets stabbed up and also through his spine. Like,
Hmm.
not like to the side of his stomach, like what happens to Sabine or Kylo. It's like directly through his spine. Like
Mhm.
he done.
Yeah,
He gone.
makes
I think
sense.
that's the I think that makes sense. MVP of the movie is John Williams.
I agree. That was who I was going to say before. I mean, Duel of the Fates is up there with the top. I mean, it's. I think it's considered elite Star Wars music or music in general. But you know what I mean. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Star Wars has a lot of iconic music due to that man, and this is among his best work.
Yeah, completely agree. At the end of the day, Walker, why would you recommend this movie?
If you're a Star Wars fan, it's Star Wars. If you're, I mean, if you need to fill in the story, I'm not quite the type that's gonna subscribe to the. I know a lot of people have theories out there where they're like, no, the best way to watch the movies is in like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, in order and not do it. I don't. I'm not a fan of that. I think the punch is more valuable when you're treating them like a prequel and leading up to the beginning of the story we already knew beforehand. So I wouldn't say like to introduce you to the Star Wars world. I would say to treat it as it was released. But I think if you're a Star Wars fan, you got to watch this movie. And I mean, it's just got the Star Wars magic we all love. I mean, I'm sure maybe you got things you don't agree with, things don't make sense, things aren't as good as other things. Whatever your opinion is, it still has that Star Wars magic.
Yeah, I agree completely, and I will also echo what I said earlier that this is the perfect introduction for children to Star Wars. So if you have kids and you want to get them introduced to Star Wars, watch episode 1. It's the perfect one to start off with, I think, in my opinion.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's why we would both recommend this movie. That's it for Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. We've kept you guys here for a pretty long time. You and I could probably go way longer on this movie,
Yeah,
I'm
you got to pull
sure.
in the reins on us a little bit. We need someone standing, just like George Lucas might have needed behind the camera. No, I'm just
yeah.
kidding. Oh,
Yeah, we need Carly and Jess here to like prod us along
like, okay,
when it
that's
comes to
enough on the
Star Wars.
Gungans. Let's go on to the next scene.
Yeah, yeah.
um,
But you don't understand. Boss Nass has a great idea. I Ben Quadranaris. Yeah. So like, I think that's it on this one. As I said, guys, we've kind of slowed down on the stuff we've put out. We found what we think is going to work not only for us, but for the show as a whole. So we won't see you guys again until June, and in June we'll be covering 2 movies. One where we will be holding a fan vote for, so be on the lookout on the Instagram and my story for that. You'll be able to vote. But the one that we're going to do for sure, Spider-Man 2, celebrating its 20th anniversary.
hard to believe.
Feel old, man. Feel old. It's going to be a fun discussion with that one.
Yes, sir. Well, is that all you got?
That's it, man.
Well, that does it for this week. Thank you all for listening. If you're hearing this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, thanks for watching. If you're catching us on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe for more movie talk each month. Let us know in the comments below, what did you think of Star Wars Phantom Menace? Where does it rank on your 9 movie scale, 11 movie scale, 12 movie scale, however you'd like to rank them? But with that said, this has been Ben and Walker, and we'll see you next time.